Chosen one, there is a room happening right now that you were never invited into. A room full of people who cannot stand the sound of your name, who agreed a long time ago, without ever saying it out loud, that your name does not get spoken there. Not because they forgot you. Forgetting is easy, harmless, forgivable. What they did was worse. They banned you. Quietly, socially, permanently, or so they thought. And last night, in that exact room, somebody broke the rule. They said your name, clean, clear, out loud, in front of every single person who has spent months pretending they never think about you. And chosen one, every head in that room turned, not toward the door, not toward whoever spoke, toward the name itself, like it had walked in uninvited and taken the one seat nobody offered you. You were not there. You did not orchestrate it. You did not send a message, plan a comeback, or ask a single soul to bring you up. You were somewhere else entirely, living your life, moving forward, and your name still found its way into a room built specifically to keep you out. That is not an accident. That is not coincidence. That is what happens when a name carries more weight than the people trying to bury it ever accounted for. They thought silence was control. They thought if nobody said it out loud, it would eventually stop being true, stop being felt, stop mattering. But a name does not ask permission to exist. It does not check who is comfortable before it shows up. And when someone finally said yours in that room, nobody shrugged it off. Nobody kept talking. The room froze. That freeze, chosen one, is the part they will never explain to you, because explaining it means admitting the truth out loud. You were never gone. You were never forgotten. You were just waiting for the moment the silence broke on its own, in a room you didn't even have to walk into. Before we go any further into what actually happened in that room and why it means more than they will ever admit, take a second, hit like, hit subscribe, and let this one travel to the next chosen one who needs to hear it today. Consider it the toll paid back to the universe for a moment like this one. Now let's keep going. Chosen one, if you have ever felt the sting of being discussed instead of spoken to, if you know what it feels like to have your name turned into something people trade behind closed doors, then what comes next is going to land somewhere deep. Drop a 77 in the comments right now if you're ready to understand exactly why that room went still, and if this message means something to you. A super thanks helps this reach the next person who needs it. Let's break this down, piece by piece. Number 1. The room that was never supposed to know your name. Every group of people who turned on you eventually builds the same thing without realizing it. A room. Not always a physical one. Sometimes it's a group chat, a family dinner, a friend circle that used to include you, a workplace that quietly closed ranks after you left. But it functions exactly like a room. There are people inside it who decided together, without ever holding a vote, that your name would not be spoken there. Not with warmth, not with hate, not at all. That is the part people underestimate. Erasure isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just becomes a habit, a small unspoken agreement that gets easier to keep the longer nobody breaks it. You were never told about this room. That's the point. Rooms like this only work if the person being erased never finds out they were erased. If you knew, you might ask questions. You might show up. You might make them explain themselves in front of each other, and none of them want that, because explaining why they stopped saying your name would mean explaining what you actually did to deserve it. And most of the time, chosen one, the honest answer is nothing they can defend out loud. So instead, they built the silence, slowly, one skipped mention at a time, one conversation that steered away from you right before your name came up, one person who changed the subject a little too quickly, a little too smoothly, until it became second nature. That's not a coincidence. That's architecture. Somebody designed that silence, even if nobody ever called a meeting about it. Here's what they didn't plan for. Silence built on avoidance is fragile. It only survives as long as nobody tests it. And all it takes is one person, one moment, one slip, for the entire structure to come down. That's exactly what happened. Somebody in that room, whether out of carelessness or courage, said the one word they had all agreed never to say: your name. And the second it left their mouth, the room they built collapsed in real time, right there, in front of everyone who helped construct it. Think about what that means. A silence that took months to build fell apart in one sentence. That's not strength on their part. That's proof the whole thing was never stable to begin with. You don't need scaffolding to hold up something that's actually settled. You only need walls and rules and unspoken agreements when the truth underneath is still shifting, still raw, still capable of knocking everything over the second it's touched. Ask yourself something honest for a second. How much energy does it take to erase someone completely, to make sure a name never slips out during a normal conversation, during a memory, during a moment when it would naturally come up on its own? That kind of erasure isn't passive. It requires constant attention from every person involved, including the ones who might have actually still liked you, still respected you, still wondered how you were doing, but chose the comfort of the group over the discomfort of saying so. Every one of them paid a small tax every single day. That room stayed quiet about you, and most of them never even noticed they were paying it. Because avoidance had become so automatic, it stopped feeling like a choice at all. They thought they built a room that could exist without you. What they actually built was a room that could only survive as long as your name never entered it. And chosen one, names don't respect boundaries built out of fear. They wait. And when they're finally spoken, they walk straight through every wall built to keep them out. Number 2, why don't say that name here was never a boundary, it was a confession. Let's be honest about what a rule like that actually means. People set boundaries around things that hurt them, threaten them, or expose them. Nobody bans the mention of something that means nothing. You don't build a rule around a name that has no power over the room. If your name genuinely didn't matter to them, they would say it freely, carelessly, the way people mention anyone forgettable. Instead, they treated it like a live wire, something to step around, something that could not be touched without consequence. That's not indifference, chosen one. That's fear wearing the costume of indifference. And fear like that doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from knowing something, knowing they were wrong about you, knowing what actually happened doesn't match the story they've been telling each other. Knowing that if your name gets said too many times, too openly, too honestly, someone in that room might start asking the questions they've all been avoiding. Picture it like a house with one door nobody opens. Every other door in that house gets used, gets walked through without a second thought. But that one door stays shut, and everyone in the house has silently agreed not to ask why. That's what your name became to them, not forgotten, sealed. And here's the part that should sit with you. Sealing something takes effort. It takes constant, ongoing maintenance. Somebody has to notice when the conversation drifts toward you and steer it away. Somebody has to catch themselves mid-sentence and swallow the words. Somebody has to remember every single time that this door stays shut. That's not the behavior of people who moved on. People who actually move on don't need a rule. They just forget naturally, without effort, because the thing genuinely stopped mattering. What you were dealing with was never forgetting. It was suppression, and suppression only exists around things that are still very much alive underneath the surface. Ask yourself why a room full of people who claim not to care about you would need a rule at all. Rules exist to prevent something from happening. What exactly were they afraid would happen if your name got said? A memory resurfacing? A guilt nobody wanted to sit with? A version of events cracking open that didn't match the one they'd rehearsed for each other? Whatever it was, It was significant enough to require constant management. And nothing requires that kind of management unless it still holds real weight. Think about the difference between a house with no alarm system and a house wired with sensors on every window. The first house has nothing to protect because nothing inside it matters enough to guard. The second house is rigged specifically because someone decided something inside was worth defending against intrusion. That room they built wasn't the first kind of house. It was the second. Every unspoken rule around your name was another sensor, another wire, another quiet acknowledgement that if the wrong thing touched it, the whole system would go off. People don't wire alarms around empty rooms. They wire them around the ones holding something they're afraid of losing control over. So when someone finally said your name, and the room reacted the way it did, that wasn't the room reacting to a stranger's mention of someone irrelevant. That was the door swinging open after months of everyone agreeing to keep it shut. And once a door like that opens, chosen one, it doesn't quietly close again. Everyone inside has to sit with what's on the other side of it, whether they're ready or not. Number 3. The second every head turned. There's a specific kind of silence that only happens when something forbidden gets said out loud. And if you've never witnessed it, you've probably felt it, even from a distance. It's not a quiet room. Quiet rooms are peaceful. This is different. This is a room that goes still the way a house goes still, right before a storm hits, when the air changes pressure and everyone's body knows something shifted before their mind catches up. That's what happened the second your name left someone's mouth. Every head turned, and chosen one, that reaction tells you everything you need to know about how much space you still occupy in a place you supposedly don't belong anymore. People don't react like that to names that mean nothing. Nobody's shoulders tense at the mention of someone irrelevant. Nobody's eyes dart toward the person who spoke, silently asking, "Are we allowed to talk about this?" That reaction is reserved for names that still carry consequence. Think about what a turned head actually represents. It's involuntary. Nobody plans to react that visibly. It's the body doing what the mind hasn't caught up to yet, responding to a threat, a memory, an unfinished conversation before logic has a chance to smooth it over. That room didn't choose to react. It couldn't help it. And that, chosen one, is far more honest than anything any of them would have said to your face. Imagine a pond that's been sitting still for months, calm on the surface, nothing moving. Then one stone drops in, just one, and suddenly the entire surface ripples outward, edge to edge, no part of it staying untouched. Your name was that stone. It didn't need to be shouted. It didn't need context or explanation. It just needed to exist out loud in a space that had spent months pretending it had no effect on anyone anymore. And the ripple proved otherwise instantly. Here's what none of them will admit. In that frozen second, before anyone recovered enough to change the subject, or laugh it off, or pretend it was nothing, the room told the truth. You were still the loudest thing in it, even in your absence. Even without your voice, your face, your presence. A single mention of your name did more to that room than most people manage by walking in the door. Notice, too, what people do with their eyes in a moment like that. They don't just react individually, they check each other. A glance toward the person who said it, then a quick glance toward someone else in the room, silently asking, "Is this as big of a deal as it feels right now?" That's not casual curiosity. That's a room full of people trying to calibrate their reaction against everyone else's, trying to figure out how much of the truth they're allowed to show on their own face. And in that split second of checking, before anyone settles on a safe expression, you can see exactly how much they've been managing, how carefully they've been performing indifference this entire time. They'll try to rewrite it afterward. Someone will probably claim they were just surprised, or that the topic caught them off guard, or that it wasn't a big deal at all. But you don't need their explanation. You already have the evidence. Heads don't turn for nothing. Silence doesn't fall for nothing. What happened in that room happened because your name still means something none of them are ready to say out loud, and no amount of backpedaling afterward changes what everyone in that room felt in the second it happened. Number 4. Silence was never them moving on. This is the lie they've told themselves the longest, and probably the lie they've told you too, if it ever came up. We moved on. We're not thinking about it anymore. It's in the past. But moving on doesn't require rules. Moving on doesn't require careful subject changes and nervous glances and months of collective effort to avoid 3 syllables. What you were living through, without even knowing it, wasn't their peace. It was their management plan. There's a difference between a wound that healed and a wound that got covered up. A healed wound doesn't need protecting. You can bump it, press on it, talk about it, and nothing happens because it's actually closed. A covered wound is different. It still hurts underneath. It still reacts to pressure. And the second something touches it, even lightly, even accidentally, the whole thing reopens like no time passed at all. That's what your name did in that room. If they had truly moved on, if the silence had ever actually been peace, your name would have landed the way any ordinary name lands, mentioned and forgotten within seconds. Instead, it detonated. Instead, the whole atmosphere shifted. That's not the reaction of people who healed. That's the reaction of people who spent months applying pressure to a wound and calling it recovery. Imagine someone hiding a crack in a wall behind a painting. From a distance, the wall looks fine. Nobody would know anything was wrong unless they moved the painting, and nobody ever does, because moving it means confronting the crack underneath. That painting is the silence they built around your name. It made the wall look intact. It never actually repaired anything. And here's the part that should give you something close to peace, even if it's uncomfortable to sit with. If they had truly stopped caring, your name would carry no charge. It would land flat. Instead, it landed like something forbidden, something with consequences attached, something that required all of them to react in unison the second it touched air. People don't build that kind of reflex around things they've genuinely released. They build it around things they're still actively, exhaustingly, quietly still carrying. Real closure looks almost boring from the outside. People who've genuinely moved on can mention your name in passing, hear it from someone else, see it pop up somewhere online, and feel almost nothing at all. No script to follow, no group agreement required, no careful redirection of the conversation. That kind of peace doesn't need protecting because there's nothing underneath it left to protect. What you witnessed instead was the opposite. A group of people who needed rules, who needed cooperation, who needed everyone on the same page just to keep the appearance of calm intact. That's not what peace looks like. That's what a management team looks like. And management teams only exist around problems that are still active, still unresolved, still capable of causing damage if left unattended for even a moment. Ask yourself plainly, do people build committees around things that don't matter to them anymore? Do they assign unspoken roles, the one who changes the subject, the one who watches your reactions, the one who reports back if your name comes up somewhere else? That level of coordination isn't indifference dressed up as maturity. It's a full operation, quietly running in the background of every gathering, existing solely because the alternative, actually confronting what happened, was never something any of them were ready to do. So the next time someone tells you they've moved on, remember what a single mention of your name did to a room full of people who supposedly already had. Silence was never their peace. It was their maintenance, and maintenance stops working the moment somebody stops doing the work required to keep it standing. Number 5, the one who said it anyway. Somebody in that room broke the rule, chosen one, and that detail matters more than almost anything else in this entire story. Whoever it was knew exactly what they were doing. They knew the room had an unspoken agreement. They knew your name wasn't supposed to be said there, and they said it anyway, in front of everyone, without flinching, without apologizing, without softening it into something safer. That's not an accident. People don't break social rules that carry weight without some kind of reason pushing them to do it. Maybe they got tired of watching a lie get maintained in real time. Maybe something reminded them of who you actually were, underneath whatever version of the story the room had settled on. Maybe they simply reached a point where pretending felt more exhausting than telling the truth. Whatever it was, they made a choice that everyone else in that room had been too afraid to make for months. Think about the courage that takes, even in a small moment like that one. It's easy to go along with a room's unspoken rules. It's easy to stay quiet, avoid the subject, protect the peace everyone else agreed to protect. It's much harder to be the person who says the thing nobody else will say, knowing full well that every head is about to turn, that the temperature of the room is about to change, that they're about to become the reason for a silence breaking that everyone else worked hard to maintain. Picture someone standing at the edge of a frozen lake everyone agreed not to walk on, and instead of staying on the shore with the rest of the group, they step out onto the ice anyway. Everyone else holds their breath, watching, waiting to see what happens. That's what saying your name in that room was. A test of whether the ice would hold, whether the silence was really as solid as everyone pretended, and it cracked instantly, because it was never as solid as they wanted it to be. Understand what that person risked in that instant. Groups punish rule breakers quickly and quietly, sometimes with nothing more than a look, a shift in tone, a subtle distancing that starts the second the moment passes. Whoever said your name knew that risk existed and said it anyway. That's not a small act of rebellion. That's someone deciding, in real time, that maintaining a comfortable lie mattered less to them than acknowledging something true, even if the truth was inconvenient for everyone else standing in that room. Most people never reach that point. Most people calculate the social cost and stay quiet, year after year, letting the silence win by default, because speaking up simply isn't worth what it might cost them personally. Somebody decided you were worth that cost. Maybe it wasn't even planned. Maybe it slipped out mid-sentence before they had time to catch themselves. Even if that's true, notice what that says. The name was sitting that close to the surface, ready to escape the moment the guard came down for even a second. People don't accidentally say things that have been fully erased from their minds. They only slip on names they've been actively, consciously suppressing. You may never know exactly who it was. You may never get the full story of what led to that moment. But understand this. Somebody in a room full of people who claim not to think about you anymore decided your name was still worth saying out loud, even knowing what it would cost them socially in that moment. That is not a small thing. That is someone deciding the truth mattered more than the comfort of staying quiet, and whether they did it out of loyalty, guilt, or simple honesty, the effect was the same. Your name entered a room built to keep it out, and the room could not survive the contact. Number 6. Why your name still has weight they can't explain. Here's a question worth sitting with. If you were truly as unimportant to them as they've acted, why does your name still carry consequences when it's spoken? Unimportant things don't require careful handling. Nobody organizes a room around avoiding the mention of someone who genuinely doesn't matter to them anymore. The fact that your name still lands with weight, still shifts a room's temperature, still makes people brace themselves, tells you something they will never say to your face. You are still unfinished business. Weight like that doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from unresolved guilt, unanswered questions, comparisons they don't want to make out loud, or a truth they know they'd have to face if your name got discussed honestly instead of avoided. People don't flinch at names attached to nothing. They flinch at names attached to something they haven't dealt with. Think of your name like an object left in the middle of a room that everyone has silently agreed to walk around instead of moving. It's inconvenient. It disrupts the flow of the space. But moving it means picking it up, means confronting whatever it represents, means admitting it's still there and always has been. So instead, everyone just learns the new path around it, pretending the obstacle isn't really an obstacle at all. Except now, someone bumped into it, out loud, in front of everyone, and there's no more pretending it wasn't always right there in the middle of the room. Chosen one, weight like that is not given away for free. Nobody accidentally becomes the person a whole room organizes its silence around. That kind of gravity is earned, whether through the depth of what happened, the truth of who was actually right, or the simple fact that you left more of a mark than they were prepared to admit. People try to shrink names down to nothing when the size of them scares the room. And your name, clearly, still needed shrinking, which means it never actually got small in the first place. Consider how often people compare themselves to someone they claim not to think about. A new relationship gets measured against the shadow of an old one. A new coworker gets compared, quietly, to the person who used to fill that role. A new version of a friend group gets held up against the version that included you, even if nobody says so out loud. Comparisons like that don't happen around people who genuinely stopped mattering. They happen when the standard you set, whether they'll ever admit it or not, is still the one everyone else in that room is quietly being measured against. That's a different kind of weight than fear. That's the weight of a bar nobody has managed to clear since you left it there. And weight like that doesn't fade just because people stop mentioning it out loud. If anything, unspoken comparisons carry more power than spoken ones, because nobody gets the chance to argue with them, dispute them, or bring them into the light where they could finally be resolved. They just sit there, quietly shaping decisions, quietly influencing reactions, quietly proving that your name was never actually removed from the equation. It was just moved underground, where it kept working exactly the way it always had. That is the part they cannot explain to themselves, let alone to each other. If you were truly gone, truly irrelevant, truly forgotten the way they claimed, your name would have landed in that room like static, background noise nobody registered. Instead, it landed like a spark near dry wood. And sparks don't do that near things that are actually finished burning. They only do that near things that are still capable of catching fire again, given the smallest amount of air. Number 7. What a frozen room actually confesses. A room doesn't lie the way people do. People choose their words. People manage their expressions. People rehearse what they'll say if a certain subject comes up. But a room, the actual physical space, the collective body language of everyone standing in it, doesn't get to rehearse. It reacts in real time, honestly, before anyone has a chance to control the narrative. That's exactly what happened when your name got said. Before anyone could smooth it over, laugh it off, or change the subject, the room told the truth on its own. Shoulders stiffened. Eyes moved toward the person who said it, then away, then toward the floor. Somebody probably went quiet mid-sentence. Somebody probably shifted their weight, crossed their arms, looked anywhere except at each other. None of that was planned. None of that was strategy. That was the truth escaping before the performance could catch up to contain it. Think about how rare that actually is. Most of the time, the people in that room have had months to build a united front around you, a shared story they all agreed to tell, careful language they use whenever your situation comes up. But nobody prepares for the moment the forbidden name actually gets spoken, because the entire plan was built around that never happening. So when it did happen, there was no script ready. There was only the real reaction, unfiltered, honest, impossible to fake. Picture a group of actors mid-performance when someone accidentally walks onto the stage who was never supposed to be part of the play. For one unscripted moment, every actor breaks character at the same time, and the audience sees something real underneath the performance they were being sold. That's what happened in that room. Your name walked onto a stage that had been carefully built without you, and for one honest second, everyone forgot their lines. Watch what typically happens in the minutes right after a moment like that. Someone usually tries to fill the silence too quickly, laughing a little too loud, changing the subject a little too fast, as if speed alone could undo what just happened. That rush to recover is its own kind of evidence. People don't scramble to patch over something that never cracked in the first place. The scramble only happens because everyone in that room, on some level, understood that the silence just revealed more than any of them meant to reveal. And the fastest way to bury a moment like that is to talk over it before anyone has time to sit with what it actually exposed. Somebody in that room might even try, later that night or the next day, to explain the reaction away to someone who wasn't present. It caught us off guard, they'll say, or it just got a little awkward for a second. Listen to how much effort goes into that explanation. Nobody explains a non-event. Nobody needs to justify a reaction to something that carried no weight. The very act of needing to explain it afterward is proof that the room knew, even if only privately, that what happened mattered more than any of them are willing to admit out loud. Whatever they say afterward, whatever excuse gets passed around about being caught off guard, or the topic just being awkward, none of it erases what the room confessed in that frozen moment. You still matter to the story they've been telling. You still occupy space they haven't figured out how to fill. And a room can pretend its way out of almost anything, except the one moment nobody had time to prepare for. Number 8. The panic that started the second the word left someone's mouth. Watch what happens after a moment like that, chosen one, because the panic that follows tells you just as much as the freeze itself. Somebody in that room is almost certainly scrambling right now, replaying the moment, wondering who else noticed how loudly the room reacted, wondering if word is going to travel, wondering if this small crack is about to become something bigger than they can control. That panic isn't about you finding out your name got said. Most of the time you won't even know it happened unless someone tells you, and even then, you'll likely never learn every detail. The panic is about what the moment revealed to the people standing inside that room. It's about the fact that everyone present just watched, in real time, how much your name still weighs, how much control the silence actually required, and how thin the story they'd all agreed on really was. People who genuinely believe their own narrative don't panic when it gets tested. If they truly believed you were the villain of their version of events, your name being said wouldn't threaten anything. It would simply confirm what they already told themselves. The panic only exists because some part of every person in that room knows the story doesn't fully hold up. And a moment like this one puts that fragility on display for everyone else to witness. Imagine a group of people quietly maintaining a lie for months, each of them individually unsure if the others actually still believe it, none of them willing to be the first to say so out loud. Then something happens that forces the lie into the light for a second, and suddenly everyone is looking around, trying to gauge whether this is the moment it all falls apart. That uncertainty, that scrambling, that quiet dread, that's exactly what's happening in the aftermath of your name being spoken in a room that spent so long pretending it never would be. In the days that follow a moment like this, watch for quiet activity you'll probably never see directly, but can imagine easily enough. Private messages checking in with each other, careful questions about who else was around, who else heard, whether it's likely to come up again. Someone probably rehearses, quietly, what they'd say if it does. That kind of behind-the-scenes scrambling is its own confession. People don't coordinate damage control around a story they're confident holds up under pressure. They coordinate it because some part of them knows the version they've been telling has cracks in it now. Cracks that a single sentence exposed in front of the one audience they were most afraid would ever see them. And here's the quiet irony in all of it. The more effort they put into managing the aftermath, the more obvious it becomes to anyone paying attention that something real happened. Genuine non-events don't require damage control. Only real ones do. The scrambling itself becomes the proof, circulating quietly through the same group that swore, for months, that your name meant nothing to them anymore. Here's what matters most for you to understand. That panic isn't your responsibility to manage. You didn't cause it. You didn't orchestrate it. You weren't even in the room. What you're witnessing, even from a distance, is a group of people confronting the consequences of a silence they built and maintained entirely on their own terms. Let them sit in it. Let the discomfort do what it's going to do. You don't owe anyone relief from a mess they constructed long before your name ever re-entered the conversation. Number 9. Why they rehearsed what they'd say if this day came. Here's something worth considering. Somewhere, quietly, at least one person in that room has already thought about what they'd say if your name ever came up unexpectedly. Maybe they never said it out loud to anyone, but the thought crossed their mind at some point. What would I say if someone brought them up? What would I do if their name got said in front of everyone? That kind of mental rehearsal doesn't happen around people who genuinely don't matter anymore. You don't prepare a response for a subject that carries no weight. The fact that a version of that moment had already been imagined, even briefly, tells you the room knew this day was coming eventually. Silence, like the kind they built, rarely holds forever. Somebody always slips, forgets, gets careless, or simply decides enough time has passed to test the boundary. On some level, everyone in that room understood the rule was temporary, fragile, dependent entirely on continued cooperation from every single person involved. And rules like that break the moment even one person stops playing along. Think about a group of people quietly agreeing never to open a particular door, each of them silently aware that eventually someone will. Maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of carelessness, maybe out of simply forgetting the rule existed in a moment of ordinary conversation. Whatever the reason, everyone in that group has already imagined what happens the day the door swings open, even if none of them says it out loud. That imagined moment just became real. And chosen one, here's the part that should sit with you the longest. The fact that they rehearsed for this moment, even mentally, even briefly, proves the silence was never comfortable. Comfortable things don't need contingency plans. Nobody prepares a response for a name that means nothing. You prepare for things you're afraid of, things you know are still capable of shaking the room if they resurface, things you've been quietly bracing for without ever admitting it to anyone else standing beside you. Think about how specific that kind of dread actually is. It's not a vague, general anxiety about the past. It's a very particular fear attached to a very particular name, a very particular set of consequences that person imagined playing out in a very particular room. That level of specificity doesn't happen by accident. You don't rehearse a response to something abstract. You rehearse a response to something you know, with real certainty, is still capable of showing up and changing the temperature of a room the second it does. That kind of mental preparation is reserved for threats people take seriously, not for names they've genuinely filed away as irrelevant. And consider what it means that the rehearsed version never quite matches what actually happens. People plan calm, measured responses in their heads, imagining themselves handling it smoothly if the moment ever came. But real moments rarely follow the script. The name gets said at an unexpected time, in an unexpected context, catching even the most prepared person off guard. That gap between the rehearsal and the reality is exactly why the room reacted the way it did. No amount of imagined composure survives contact with the real thing, especially when the real thing arrives exactly when nobody expected it to. So when the moment actually came, when your name actually left someone's mouth in that room, the panic wasn't just about the immediate reaction. It was about realizing the thing they'd been quietly dreading finally happened, and no amount of preparation made it land any softer than they feared it would. Number 10. The quiet ones in that room are the most exposed now. Let's talk about the people who said nothing while your name detonated the room, because their silence in that moment says more than almost anyone else's reaction. There's a difference between the person who spoke your name and the people who simply watched it happen without a word. The speaker made a choice, visible and immediate. The quiet ones made a choice too, just a slower, more careful one, and it's the one they'll have to sit with the longest. Silence in a moment like that isn't neutral. It's a decision to let the tension exist without addressing it, to avoid taking a side while everyone else in the room is quietly picking one anyway. The people who said nothing were hoping, probably, that staying quiet would let them avoid being associated with either reaction, the discomfort, or the defense. But silence doesn't actually protect anyone in a moment like that. It just delays the moment they have to decide what they actually believe. Here's what happens to people who try to stay neutral in a room that just got shaken. Eventually, someone notices they never reacted at all, never defended the silence, never explained the discomfort, never said a word either way. And that noticing changes how people see them, whether they intended it to or not. Neutrality, in a charged moment, doesn't read as wisdom. It reads as evasion, and evasion has a way of becoming its own kind of confession over time. Picture a group of people standing near something that just cracked, all of them staring at it, none of them saying anything about what it means. Eventually, somebody has to acknowledge the crack exists, has to decide whether it gets addressed or ignored, has to take responsibility for what happens next. The longer everyone stays quiet, the more obvious it becomes that the silence itself is the choice being made, over and over, by everyone who refuses to break it. Pay attention, too, to what usually happens after a moment like this passes. Some of the quiet ones will eventually try to quietly signal, in private, that they never really agreed with how you were treated, that they always kind of felt bad about it, that they weren't like the others. Notice the timing of that confession. It never comes while the group consensus is comfortable. It only shows up once the ground has already started shifting, once staying associated with the old narrative starts to feel risky. That's not solidarity. That's damage control dressed up as loyalty, offered only once it's safe enough to offer. Real support doesn't wait for permission from the room. It doesn't wait until the silence cracks on its own before deciding which side it was always on. The people who stayed quiet while your name was being avoided, mocked, or erased had every opportunity to say something the entire time. They chose the comfort of belonging over the discomfort of honesty, and no late apology, no quiet aside after the fact, undoes the months of silence that came before it. So while it might look like the person who spoke your name is the one who took the biggest risk that night, don't overlook the ones who stayed silent. They're the ones sitting with the most unresolved discomfort now, because they didn't just witness a moment of truth breaking through. They chose, in real time, not to say anything about it, and that choice has a way of following people far longer than the moment itself ever did. Number 11. Your absence was louder than your presence ever could be. There's something almost impossible to explain to people who haven't lived it, and it's this. Sometimes the space you leave behind carries more weight than the space you used to occupy. You weren't in that room. You had no idea it was happening. You weren't performing for anyone, defending yourself to anyone, trying to prove anything to a single person present. And still, your name managed to shift the entire atmosphere without you lifting a finger. That's the part worth sitting with. presence is easy to dismiss in the moment. People can talk over you, interrupt you, roll their eyes while you're standing right there defending yourself. But absence doesn't give them anyone to argue with. Absence just leaves your name sitting there, undefended and unchallenged, forcing everyone in the room to deal with their own reaction instead of yours. And that's exactly what happened. Nobody could dismiss you, minimize you, or talk over you, because you weren't there to talk over. All that was left was the weight of your name and the discomfort it caused, entirely on its own. Think about how much louder silence becomes when there's no explanation attached to it. If you had been in that room, defending yourself, explaining your side, the moment would have had somewhere to go. People could have argued, deflected, focused on your reaction instead of their own. Instead, your name arrived alone, unaccompanied by justification, and the room had nothing to respond to except the discomfort it created in them. Imagine an empty chair at a table that everyone still glances at out of habit, even years after the person who used to sit there stopped coming. Nobody talks about why they still look. They just do. That's what your name became in that room. Not a person defending themselves, not an argument to win or lose, just a presence that lingered in the space long after you physically left it, proving that some absences are louder than anything a person could say, standing right there in the room. Think about how many times you might have wanted to defend yourself in the moment, to correct the story while it was still being written, to make sure everyone heard your version before theirs took hold. And think about how that usually plays out. Explanations in the heat of the moment often get dismissed as excuses. Defense gets read as guilt by people who've already decided what they want to believe. But absence doesn't carry any of that baggage. Absence just sits there, undefended, unexplained, and forces people to reckon with their own reaction to it instead of picking apart yours. Sometimes the most convincing thing you can do is nothing at all, and let the discomfort of your absence speak on your behalf. Ask yourself honestly whether you've ever seen someone talk their way into being believed. Rarely. Most of the time, people believe what confirms what they already suspected, and no amount of explaining changes that. But an empty chair, an unanswered question, a name that still causes a room to catch its breath, that works differently. It doesn't argue, it doesn't defend, it just exists, undeniable, and lets everyone else fill in the rest with whatever discomfort they've been carrying about you the entire time. That, chosen one, is a kind of power most people spend their whole lives trying to build and never manage to earn. You didn't have to raise your voice. You didn't have to show up. Your name did the work entirely on its own, in a room full of people who thought silence would erase you, and instead discovered it only made you louder. Number 12. The name they tried to bury is now the loudest thing in the building. Here's where this all lands, chosen one. They spent time, effort, and careful coordination trying to make sure your name never entered that room again. They built rules around it. They managed conversations around it. They trained themselves to flinch away from it before it ever got the chance to be spoken. And despite all of that effort, all that careful maintenance, one sentence undid it completely. That's the part worth remembering the next time you feel like your silence means you've lost something. You didn't lose anything by not being in that room. If anything, your absence proved exactly how much space you still occupy in people's minds, how much work it took to keep you out, and how easily that work collapsed the moment someone decided not to cooperate with it anymore. Think about what it means that a name can do that much without the person attached to it doing anything at all. You weren't fighting for a seat at that table. You weren't asking to be remembered, defended, or discussed. You were simply living your life somewhere else entirely, and your name still managed to become the loudest thing in a room, built specifically to keep it quiet. That's not something you can manufacture. That's not something you can force. That happens because of who you actually are, underneath everything they tried to convince each other about. Picture a building where every hallway was rearranged, every light dimmed, every door relabeled, all just to avoid one single room. And despite every bit of that effort, someone still finds their way there, still says the name attached to it out loud, and the entire structure they built around avoiding it comes down in a single moment. That's what happened here. All that architecture, all that careful avoidance, undone by 3 syllables nobody could stop from being spoken. Carry this forward the next time doubt tries to creep back in, the next time you wonder if you were ever really thought about after you left that room, that group, that chapter behind. You have your answer now, even if you never hear the full story of how it happened. Somewhere, in a space built specifically to keep you out, your name still holds enough weight to stop a room in its tracks. That's not something silence can take from you. That's not something distance can erase. It's proof that whatever you built, whoever you became, however you carried yourself through being erased, none of it disappeared just because the room stopped saying it out loud. It was always still there, waiting for exactly the moment it just found. So let them sit with what happened in that room. Let them replay it, second-guess it, wonder who else heard, wonder what it means going forward. You don't have to do anything else right now. You already did the only thing that mattered. You kept living, kept moving, kept existing fully somewhere else, and your name still walked into the one place it was never supposed to be welcome, and every single head turned anyway. If this message reached something real in you, chosen one, that's proof enough of what we've been talking about this whole time. Drop a 77 in the comments to mark that you felt it. Like this video, so it reaches the next person who needs to hear their name still matters somewhere they don't expect it to. Subscribe if you want to keep walking this path with us. And if you want to help this message travel further, a super thanks goes a long way. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Take care and goodbye.